Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the March 12th Planning and Zoning Commission's meeting. If we can please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Shannon, can we have a roll call, please?
Messina?
Here.
Fleming?
Here.
Ingalls?
Here.
Lutrip?
Here.
Mandel? Rumpler? Ward.
Okay. Can we have a motion to approve minutes for January 8th, 2019, please?
Chair, I'd like to so move approval of minutes.
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. At this time, it's my pleasure to have Shannon introduce Mr. Peter Lutrip, who's been on our commission for a while and finally gets sworn in as a commissioner. So, Peter, please stand.
Peter, and raise your right hand. I, Peter Lutrip, a Planning Commission appointee of the City of Coeur d'Alene, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully perform the duties of my appointed office and will support and honor to the best of my ability the constitutions of the United States and the state of Idaho and all applicable laws, ordinances, and policies of the state of Idaho and the City of Coeur d'Alene, as well as the policies, procedures, code of ethics, and code of conduct of the Coeur d'Alene City Planning Commission. I hereby, through the oath, affirm that I will perform the duties of the public trust in a fair, equitable, and ethical manner befitting the dignity and responsibilities of the office.
I do. Thank you, Shannon.
Congratulations and thank you. And also like to make note, Peter brought that to the commission to have that happen, I believe, which we don't remember doing. Is that correct?
No, we've been doing it, but since Peter's being reappointed, we thought it was appropriate to do the oath once again. He wanted to make sure that the community members know that he is under oath and that he's abiding by all the rules, regulations. So.
Well, congratulations and thank you for all your many years on the commission, by the way.
I'm junior to somebody here.
Well, you know. Okay, so you feel younger. Thank you. At this time, we were going to hold some elections for the chair and vice chair, but since we don't have a quorum here, you can see we're missing a few commissioners. We're going to have a simple vote from our commissioners to postpone that to our next planning and zoning meeting when everyone's here. So I'm looking for a simple motion.
Motion that we do have a quorum. We don't have a full house, and
Correct.
I think I don't mean to correct, but
clarifying that
for folks, we do have a proper quorum for tonight. But I'd motion that we move the elections for chair and vice chair until next meeting.
Need a second on it?
Second. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. At this time, public comment could be taken for anything that isn't on the agenda, which are the 3 items that we have in front of us tonight. If anyone wants to speak on any other item than that. Okay, it doesn't seem like anyone does. Going to staff comments, please.
All right. Good evening, commissioners. I have a few updates for you. So first of all, I wanted to thank you for participating in the workshop a couple weeks ago. So it was on February 28th. That was the Atlas Waterfront workshop related to the preliminary design and development standards. So I thought that was a great discussion. The consultant team was very impressed and thankful to you for all of the great input that was received, as well as the city departments. We're going to be doing part 2 of that in a couple weeks as well. So that'll be on April 4th from 11 to 1 here in the same room. There's also another workshop on Atlas this Friday. It's a joint workshop with City Council and the Parks and Rec Commission related to more of the shoreline and some of the parks and open space. So that should be a great discussion. That's at noon here in the library community room. For April, for our regular commission meeting, we have 3 public hearings. So there are going to be 2 requests for special use permits for density increase and 1 annexation request. So that's our April 9th meeting. And I am pleased to have been invited to present tomorrow morning at the Chamber's Executive Roundtable Group with Tony Burns. Going to be talking about growth and innovation in planning. And one of our innovative projects that we're excited about is that Envision Coeur d'Alene, which is our comprehensive plan. And we are looking forward to receiving proposals this Friday. So we are hopeful that we have some great ones that'll come in. And then we have scheduled the launch event for May 29th, so mark your calendars.
Okay.
That's all.
Thanks,
Thank
Hillary.
you.
Appreciate it. Any commissioner comments at this point?
Mr. Chair, I went to my polling place today, and I was 15th, number 15, and I see that Hillary's been there, and I'm sure others. But those have not voted yet. I promised the person I would mention in whatever form I had to encourage people to go to their polling place and cast their vote. It would be very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to open up the public hearings, and before I do that, there are sign-up sheets there for each one of the items that we have on our agenda tonight, and if you would want to speak or not speak, or just check the box to indicate whether you are for or not for that particular item, please sign up on the sheet if you haven't done so. And I appreciate it, and I'll call your name at that time if you do want to come up. At this time, we're going to do ZC-1-19.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
We
I
had
forgot
the
about
requested
that.
amendment to the
Yeah,
agenda.
okay. I need, again, a simple request here to change the order that we're in. We're going to do the item A1-1-19, the annexation first, and then we're going to go back to the ZC-1-19, which is the zone change. And if I can have a simple vote on that from the council, I appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, I would motion that we move A1-19 forward to number 1 position.
I have a motion, a second.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And thank you, Hillary, for reminding me that. Short span memory on my part. Okay, Tammy, go ahead. Thank you.
Planning Commissioners. So before I begin my presentation for the first item, I'm going to give you a perspective of where the properties are located, although they are two separate requests, one for an annexation and one for a zone change. So tonight's public hearing will include this portion of property here on the west side of Ramsey Road, and this portion of property for the zone change north of Alps. There's currently a building permit in the queue for apartments. This came before you quite some time ago for an annexation, then eventually a zone change. So I just want to put it in perspective of where the properties are located. First item, A119, and I'll begin that right now. So the applicant for this item is Lake City Engineering. Owner is Ted Burnside, and the request for zoning for a zoning designation prior to annexation. The property is a plus or minus 4.6 acre parcel on the east side of Ramsey Road. And again, 4.6 acres and the request for R17 zoning designation. So this is the subject property outlined in the yellow. It is on the south side of Prairie and west of Ramsey Road. And this is a little closer view, a vicinity map of the subject property. The applicant has also submitted an annexation map. And just to give you a little annexation history, we've had a few annexations. This one came before the Planning Commission in 2016. This portion came before the Planning Commission in 2017. You did approve an annexation for this area that hasn't been updated on our map at this point. So this is a view looking west at the existing single family and existing trees on the subject property. This picture was taken from Ramsey Road, and there's a single family dwelling unit and accessory structure tucked back here on the site with some existing trees. View a portion of the subject property looking northwest, and as you can see, there's some trees on the site. This is a view of a portion of the subject property from Ramsey Road looking southeast at Province 20 development in the background, and that's located here. View looking west at a portion of the subject property that abuts the future multifamily project known as Bluegrass Lodge along Ramsey Road. So this is approximately the property line, and this is a portion of the subject property. And this is another view of the portion of the subject property on the left, looking north toward Prairie Avenue. And that's Ramsey Road. So generally, the R17 district is intended as a medium to high-density residential district that permits a mix of housing types at a density not greater than 17 units per gross acre. And in your staff report on page 3 and page 4, you'll see the items listed under permitted uses in the R17 zone, as well as the items that are allowed by special use permit. And I'll cover all 4 findings this evening for the request. Finding B8, that this proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan policies. So this subject property falls within the Ramsey Woodland area, and the subject property is contiguous with existing city limits. And it's also noted in the comp plan as transition. The areas are where the character of the neighborhood is in transition and should be developed with care. The street network, the number of building lots, and general land use are expected to change greatly within the planning period. And this is approximately where the subject property is located, in that green, which is transition. So Ramsey Woodland today and tomorrow are noted in your staff report. Characteristics of Ramsey Woodland neighborhoods will be overall density may approach 3 to 4 residential units per acre. However, pockets of higher density housing and multifamily units are appropriate in compatible areas. And then the bullet points list pedestrian and bicycle trails, parks just 5 minutes away, neighborhood service nodes where appropriate, and multifamily and single-family housing units. And objectives are listed below. They're also noted in your staff report for the comp plan goals and objectives. Finding B9, that public facilities and utilities are or are not available and adequate for the proposed use. So staff comments are located in your staff report from streets, engineering, water, wastewater, fire. And I'll touch upon a few of them. As far as stormwater, it will be addressed as the proposed annexation develops. Traffic, Ramsey Road has the available capacity to accommodate additional traffic generated from the subject site, but access in and out of the development could be challenging during peak hours, especially for left turns. The Streets and Engineering Department has no objection to the annexation as proposed. Streets, the subject property or subject site is currently undeveloped. The site has frontage along the west side of Ramsey Road. Any necessary improvements to the site would be addressed during the site development process. And again, the Streets and Engineering Department has no objection to this annexation request if the right-of-way is provided. The subject property falls within Hayden Lake Irrigation District, so that would be handled by them. And then the wastewater department provided staff reports saying Ramsey Road right-of-way borders the easterly boundary of the subject property, and the city's wastewater utility presently has the wastewater system and capacity and willingness to serve the annexation request as proposed. And the last comment, the fire department can address all concerns at site and building permit submittals. Finding B10, that the physical characteristics of the site make or do not make it suitable for the request. The 4.6 acre parcel is located on the west side of Ramsey Road and is approximately 1/4 of a mile south of Prairie Avenue. The site fronts Ramsey Road and is generally flat. There is currently an existing single-family dwelling unit and an outbuilding on the portion of the property. However, the majority of the subject property is vacant. As you saw by the photos, there are some trees on the site as well. Physical characteristics on the site appear to be suitable for this request. Finding B11, that the proposal would or would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and/or existing land uses. As far as neighborhood character, this is a rapidly changing area within Coeur d'Alene. Multiple annexations, subdivisions, zone changes, and PUDs have been approved in the area within the last 5 years. There's an existing coffee stand, which is zone C17 to the north of the property, and a residential subdivision that abuts the property, Province 20, directly to the south. A multifamily is proposed on the abutting lot to the north, and the surrounding property consists of R8 to the south, R8, yes, to the south, R3, and R17 to the north. The applicant has stated in his narrative that the goal is to incorporate the subject property and the property to the west, that will be the zone change request, with the existing R17 multifamily zone property to the north. to create a larger multifamily project. But again, these requests all stand alone as far as the annexation and the zone change. Finding B11, again, the Ramsey Road has the available capacity to accommodate additional generated traffic from the subject site, but access in and out of the development could be challenging during the peak hours, especially for the left turn. This is the generalized existing land uses. This is got single families located here in Province 20, as I mentioned. There's an existing single family here. And this is agricultural at this time, vacant property, but it is located in the city limits. And we're not sure how that will be developed yet, but it is a PUD. This is the existing zoning. C17 noted in the red, R8. And they're proposing the R17 zone. And actually, this is not updated. This should be R17 as well. So there was only one proposed item for an annexation agreement, and the building department stated prior to the completion of the annexation, the applicant must address any outstanding code violations for the existing structures on site. And that's the end of my presentation. Any questions for me?
Go ahead, Peter.
Go back that slide a little earlier. It showed right there, essentially this, no, forward now, right there. Essentially, this is all red, isn't it? I mean, the block going down there, the subject property would, pretty quick.
This should actually be the kind of orange, which is R17.
Which one should be orange?
This area here
Yes.
and this area here.
What I'm getting to is it looks like as we're moving, the C17 is moving on down Ramsey.
On this side, it was all rezoned C17,
Right, and
but
then-
this is rezoned to R17. It's an error in the map.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Tammy.
Actually, it may be helpful if I go to my other presentation real quick, just to show you the accurate one, because I want to make sure that we've got the zoning correct. Just for clarification purposes. All right, so this is accurate. This has the R17, and this is the red for C17 where the coffee stand exists. All of this is R17, you're correct. Any other questions?
Okay, thanks, Tammy. Drew, are you representing the applicant? Just state your name for the record.
Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good evening, Chairman Messina, fellow commissioners. Again, Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering, representing Ted Bernstein, Tammy Coeur tonight in the annexation and zoning, and also representing Copper Basin Construction, who's the developer.
Oh, sorry, let me interrupt you first for a second there, Drew. Can everyone hear us back there from the panel? No, I'm sorry, I should have asked that.
Yeah, I
It's
don't
us.
think the
If
mic
they
is
can,
on.
Adjust it. Can you hear us better now? Can you hear us?
How about now? I don't think my mic is on.
They can't hear Drew at the podium.
Time out.
Hear Tammy, but I don't know what's going on. You can touch it.
I didn't do it. How about now? Can you hear me now? Better?
And can you hear me now?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, for the record, Drew Dittman with Lake City Engineering. Tammy covered most of what I wanted to cover, but I'll briefly go over a few things. We'll talk about strictly the annexation now, and we'll come back and talk about the zoning as they're two separate issues. So the property there highlighted in red, 7725 North Ramsey Road, 4.6 acres. It's currently zoned commercial in the county. We're proposing an R17 zoning designation. Comp plan designates it as Ramsey Woodland. So as Tammy had said, property to the north here is all R17. These little yellow areas are actually pockets of county. This is actually the school site, so that's in the city now, and that map needs to be updated. But you have C17 down the east side of Ramsey, little C17 at the corner where the coffee stand is. but the property to the north is R17. You have R8 to the south, which is the Province 20 subdivision, and then you have the Coeur d'Alene Place PUD to the south of that, with C17 in the corner under the PUD. As Tammy said, you know, Idaho code requires express standards for annexation and zoning requests. And the city has determined those as these 4 items here. And again, these were in Tammy's staff report, so I'm really not going to go through them too much. We believe the proposal is in conformance with the comp plan. Again, this is in the Ramsey Woodland District, and Tammy touched on this, but I'm going to read it again. Characteristics of the Ramsey Woodland neighborhood is, overall density may approach 3 to 4 residential units per acre. Again, that's overall density in that area. Pockets of higher density housing and multifamily units are appropriate in compatible areas. Pedestrian and bicycle trails, parks just 5-minute walks away, neighborhood service nodes where appropriate, and multifamily and single housing units. If I can go back to this map, you have commercial here at the corner, as I said, that'll be your neighborhood service nodes. You have commercial all along the east side of Ramsey. Currently is a trail that runs all the way along Ramsey, runs into the Coeur d'Alene Place subdivision, runs down to the high school, down to the Maverick. So it's within proximity of walking trails, pedestrian facilities. So from that standpoint, it is a good fit. It meets the requirements of the comprehensive plan. Public facilities, number B9 there. Utilities are available. Tammy went through that again. There is the willingness and the capacity from the wastewater department. There are no objections from streets and engineering. We've been in contact with Hayden Lake Irrigation District. They're the water purveyor. They have no issues. They're willing to serve the property. So item B9, we can check that. The physical characteristics of the site, number B10, make it suitable. It's flat. Yeah, there's some trees on it. There's a tree farm there, but there's no outstanding features that would prohibit development on that property. And B11, a proposal would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic. There's a blurb in your staff report from the city engineer talking about traffic. Ramsey is a major collector, if I'm not mistaken, can handle traffic. Prairie is obviously a principal arterial, can handle high volumes of traffic. Neighborhood character and land uses. So again, I'll go back to the zoning map. We have R17 property to the north, commercial to the north, commercial to the east. You have R8 to the south, but you also have C17 south of that. So you have higher density uses south of that. And then this area here in black is the currently R3, but we're asking for that to be changed to R17. So we'll be discussing that in a little bit. So we do feel that it meets the existing and surrounding land uses. I think with that, I will stand for questions on the annexation.
Questions, Lynn?
The left turn issue, will we address that on the next? Because this seems to be all linked and opportunities.
Yeah, we can address that in the
going
next.
left.
Yeah, sorry. That's more of a development type issue that'll be addressed at time of development, site plan review. Those are issues that we'll work out, or I'll work out with the city engineer,
Okay.
based on number of approved units, based on approved site plans and densities. It's a little premature to be talking about it now, as there's no development in front of you. But those are issues that, yeah, that we'll be addressing with the city engineer when the time is appropriate.
Okay. That
John?
seems-
Mr. Ingles?
So, Mr. Dittman, that parcel is in the county right now.
Correct.
Sean Holm calls that a donut hole, I think. I call it Swiss cheese or whatever.
Infill.
It's a freeloader. You know, they're getting city services. The police are going to be, from Coeur d'Alene, are going to be the first on the scene. Coeur d'Alene Fire, first on the scene.
True.
Coeur d'Alene Streets paves that street, patches that street, plows that street, and yet they're in the county. So it makes a ton of sense, excuse me, a ton of sense, obviously, to clean up these donut holes and bring this into the city. That's, I think, the no-brainer part of this, okay? So if I lived in one of those houses to the south, a single-family house, I like the view, looking north, nice tree farm, you know, and I want that to be that way forever. You know, that's probably not realistic, because unless I want to just buy it and keep it as a tree farm. So this is kind of I'm just curious where I'm going with this is, here's kind of one proposal or a plan to put R17 on there. Paint me a picture what that looks and feels like compared to what would be the alternative if this were turned down, and it being county commercial
Yeah.
would, and granted, that's not a complete open
True.
checkbook because they got to sewer it, so it can't be an event center or something like that. But
Sure.
it could be. Help me understand. If you, what might it be in the county? A gas station, a Maverick kind of a deal where you don't have a ton of where you could sewer on site. Help me understand what are the competing.
So you could, that's a good point, and I don't know, you talk about view corridors, I don't know the height restrictions in the county off the top of my head in the commercial zone. But you could develop it as commercial. You could put a Maverick gas station there, for example, and do septic on site. It's a 5-acre piece, 4.6 acres. It's large enough to do an on-site septic system and do a gas station with a certain number of employees. There's a number of commercial uses that could be done there. It could be annexed into the city as commercial too. You've got commercial property surrounding it to the east. You've got commercial property to the south. I know there's the R8 piece between it, but there's still more commercial to the south.
And if it came into the city as commercial, that really would be an open checkbook
Oh,
because you'd have the sewering to do
It's, yeah,
anything.
you could
So
do,
a gas station, say, is possible, something like that, mini storage, who knows what.
correct.
Mini storage doesn't require a lot of sewering.
correct.
So that's that picture in my mind. Help me understand just what R17 looks like. Is that
R17
a
is-
2-3-story walk-up?
It's 17 units to the acre. Max building height in R17 is 45, correct? I didn't want to speak out of turn. So you could go 45, which is 3 stories. You don't need to go 3 stories to get density. You can get 17 units to the acre with 2-story buildings. We do it in a lot of projects. We've done it in the landings, the apartments in the landings, Carrington Place. Those are all 2-story apartments, though that's about 17 units to the acre. We've done right down the street, Centennial Pines project, if you guys remember that one, 2-story apartments. I would anticipate that's what you would see here. You could do 3-story apartments. I don't, maybe they're there, maybe they're not. I don't know. I mean, the code allows 45-foot building height in the R17 zone. But then again, you got to balance that with your parking requirements, your stormwater, and make the site work, and so on and so forth, so. Is it-
Thank
John,
you.
I think we can get into the R17 zone change, more questions later.
Yep,
As
thank
the
you.
applicants come up, not the applicants, but people who signed up, we're just talking about the annexation at this time, so we can address our annexation questions right now. If you have any questions about height and what can be put in there on a different zone, we'll address it at the next hearing, which is after this one. I do have a question. Drew, did you get, or did you see a copy from the school district?
I did.
All right, because I have a question on that, and maybe it could be something at the C-17, but it's on page 2, number 7, under partnerships. And it's the last 3 sentences where it starts with, the district is also pleased to report that the developer has indicated a willingness to provide some mitigation for the impact on local schools. What exactly is that?
That's a good question. I know the applicant has been in contact with the school district as a result of this letter. They have discussed, obviously, you have the school site, which I believe are all 3 of these parcels here. Now, we're not contiguous to it, but we kind of touch it at the corner. They've asked us if we would provide connectivity via a walking trail for potential students to walk to the school site. Now, we can only get to, obviously, our border there because we touch right at the corner, so we can provide a walking trail on ours to get there. As far as mitigation of other impacts, I don't know what discussions have been had with the developer or if they've really reached conclusion on that. In Idaho, as you guys are well aware, you can't have impact fees for schools. It's not allowed by code. Kind of tugs at my heartstrings. I've got 2 kids that are in the Coeur d'Alene School District. Schools are funded by property taxes, by the levy rate. Hopefully everybody voted today. I get it, but again, until the laws in Idaho are changed, you can't have impact fees to pay for schools. This project in and of itself is it's a 10-acre, project, get a 5-acre annexation and a 5-acre zone change. Is that going to break the bank when it comes to the school? Probably not. Does the school have a problem today? I'm sure they do. They have overcrowding issues. They have funding issues. Obviously not a result of directly this project, but it seems to, the school that I don't want to say they're picking on us, but they've written a letter about this project because it's so close to the school. And I think that school site here has been obviously in the paper a bunch lately and had issues of its own. And that's what I know about schools.
Okay. All right. And you mentioned just now, you talking to the school, perhaps putting access to the school site from the corner of that property. Correct me, does the applicant or the owner also own that R-17 that we changed and annexed in back in March sometime?
These boundaries aren't correct. So this boundary line now comes to here. So the applicant owns, the developer owns this piece
that
here.
parcel,
Yeah.
and I take it there will be apartments on that one as well?
That one's currently zoned R-17, so yeah, it's planned for apartments.
Has that project started yet or not?
Yes and no. We have building permits kind of sitting in the building department queue.
Okay.
We haven't pulled any building permits. We haven't pulled a site development permit. You've noticed we've obviously done some grading out there. We've stripped it in anticipation of it. We kind of put that on hold when this opportunity came up for these two pieces to kind of see what would happen, to see if we can make it one big project.
Sure,
So.
that makes sense. And going back to the access to the school district from what we're talking about today, has there been any discussion, perhaps, or the property owner connecting that R-17 that's there now to what we're talking about there, to have a continuous connection from both pieces of property to the school?
Yeah, this piece is currently in the county and is not for sale.
Right.
So.
Okay. Well, I'm talking about a trail through what we're talking about now, or a walking path, however you're going to get from what we're talking today to what we approved back in March, I believe, on the other R-17, since that hasn't been developed yet, but permits have been put in. Is there any connectivity to those two parcels, so perhaps a walking path to go to the school?
I would anticipate, if this is approved, the annexation zone change, that these three parcels would become one big project.
And then they'll all be
It would
connected
all
to
be
that trail or whatever you might have in
It would all be interconnected
there?
via trails, private streets, parking lots, et cetera, to that trail network, yes.
Okay, that's
Does that
my question.
answer your question?
No, you answered my question. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, thanks. You'll
Thank
have
you.
a chance to come back up
I will.
again later. Darlene Antrim, she does wish to speak.
Dawn, I'm sorry.
Just state your name and I'll swear you in.
My name's Dawn Antrim.
Do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay.
Okay, I live right here,
Okay.
and no, I will not allow anybody to cut through that.
Uh-huh.
So my concern is because the school's going in right here, the traffic coming in and out of there is gonna be horrendous already, and I approve the school being there. It's better than apartments. I work down at the district court. It takes me 20 minutes to get from the court to my house on Ramsey, going to there and coming back home. They got Lake City High School down there, and then we got this new school coming in right there. And the traffic on 170 units is gonna be horrendous, and I vehemently oppose of that. I had the letter from the school district from a different project, and they said high-density multifamily projects put a significant strain on the schools. They're at capacity already, 14 out of the 17 schools. I have two kids that were in grade school, and they had to be split up because one couldn't hold the fifth graders, the other one couldn't hold my first grader, so I had to split them up. And my fifth grader was in modulars. There's 4 modulars out of Skyway. They can't hold the kids. My daughter in Lake City High School, same thing. They're at capacity. They cannot keep building and building and building. And like it was stated, this whole area is changing, and we're aware of that. And they're at capacity as it is without any of the new buildings coming in already. Maverick, the apartments over by the Maverick gas station are already, they're not even filled yet. And there's, I don't know how many, I don't know if that's the same amount as what they're asking to put in by my house or not, but that's a lot of extra kids that the taxpayers and the school districts have to figure out what we're gonna do with them. And the kids suffer and the families suffer because of it. As far as the traffic, they did the study down on Northwest Boulevard when they tried to do the Riverstone project. Anybody in Ramsey is gonna go down to Northwest Boulevard, get on I-90, to get downtown. I mean, we just can't fit any more people in like they're trying to cram us in. You know, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And, you know, single-family apartment or single-family dwellings, that'd be a different story. We know it's gonna fill up, we know it's gonna change, but I'm hoping that respectfully that you change and grow responsibly. That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Janet Roberts, and you do wish to speak?
Yes.
Come on up. Just state your name and I'll swear you in.
Yes, Janet Roberts,
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
I am a homeowner in Province 20, and that is the circle of homes that we see here, and I'm joined here by several other homeowners. We have already heard of the 435-acre alfalfa field being zoned for Coeur d'Alene Place, 429 homes going in that space. Our concern is definitely with apartments already having been approved in the R17 space. They've graded the land, they've created the dirt piles, and then these two other areas to be zoned also and apartment buildings built. With 429 new homes in an alfalfa field, and we already have 380 students that are in modular classrooms, our concern is the school being built that houses 550 students is already overtaxed. And we understand that that could be voted upon today in the election. But with the traffic that we see with residential units that become apartments, the density of traffic will be far more than I think we can accommodate, because the schools can't hold these people. We already have a series of, I believe it's the Maverick station, next to that station, right down by the high school, they've built a huge number of apartments that aren't yet filled. So the apartment growth in the city is burgeoning. And why we need more, I do not know. But we all know that several of the homeowners I discussed this with had said, should that land go to apartments, we'll all be putting a for sale sign on our homes, because we can't turn left into Alps Drive, which is the route to get to our homes in that circle of homes. And we're going to be overtaxed already with what's being built. So an alfalfa field, a tree farm, all very nice, very beautiful, but being surrounded, commercial property, yes, it could be restaurants, could be boutique stores, whatever, but our concern is that to live in a residence surrounded and with the school that's already got a burgeoning population is going to be a mistake. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mark Roberts is in opposition, did not indicate whether you want to speak or not. No, okay. Ted Burnside is in favor and indicated did not want to speak. Tammy Coeur in favor and did not want to speak. Melissa Jensen is opposed and did not indicate whether you want to speak or not? No? Okay. Chris Jensen is opposed, and I take it you want to speak. Just state your name and I'll swear you in.
Chris Jessen.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go ahead, Chris.
I live at 1813 Pyrenees.
Does the pointer work on the, they can use that little
Oh,
pointer?
you can use the mouse here. I live approximately right here.
If you want to go look at this one,
Okay,
you can kind
that's
of
okay.
point it out.
I live approximately right here. And my whole issue, you know, we all understand that progress is going to be progress. There's not much you can do about it. You just have to roll with it and try to put your 2 cents worth in. And what we're doing as on Pyrenees, we're kind of a close-knit neighborhood there. My biggest worry is what are they going to do right behind my house? Are they going to build a 3-story apartment building behind my house where I am going to lose sunsets because of it? The 25-foot easement back from my fence, if you put a 3-story house there, my house is 2 stories. Now, I have people that are going to look right into my bedroom. People that are going to look down onto my patio in the backyard. So my only thing to do, I mean, we moved there for a reason, because the people and the properties that are behind us were empty. You know, this field is 400 plus houses in there. How long is that going to take to fill? And then they're going to just move right into here with all these apartments. It's overly crowded. It's going to be overly crowded. If you made this duplexes, single-family dwellings, even 2-story, I don't have a problem with that. 3-story is too much. It is too much. And I think the city of Coeur d'Alene can do a little bit better than those gaudy things. We can find something else to do. I mean, I understand the annexation and all that, but this is the process. But in 5 years from now, I'm not going to have people go peeling through my neighborhood at 3 o'clock in the morning because there's, you know, all these apartments and stuff going up around there. Can't have that.
Yeah, Chris, I just want to also clarify, what we're talking about right now is that commercial red zone for annexation into the city.
Right. I understand that, but
Okay.
I just want to put my 2 cents worth about the whole thing.
Okay.
And how are you going to, they're going to possibly put apartment buildings here. There's a cell tower right in the middle of it. That's amazing to me. Would you live there?
Well, that's a question the applicant can address when they come back
All
up
right.
later, but again,
That's all I have to say.
we'll be going into some discussion on the next presentation. Thank you, Chris, appreciate it. Greg Gervais is in favor, does not want to comment. Monica Hart is opposed and did not want to speak, no, okay. And David Hertel is opposed and did not want to speak? No? You do wish? Yes. Come on down. Come on down. Just state your name and I'll swear you in.
David Hurdle.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help you
I
God?
do.
Okay, David, go ahead.
Okay, I live in,
You can use that pointer if you'd like to.
okay, I live in the Province 20 subdivision, approximately right here. And my question, and some of the things that I wanted to bring up have already been addressed. My question is, when was the traffic survey last done on Ramsey?
That would be something staff can answer, a traffic survey.
Yeah, I'm not positive. I know that the city engineer did evaluate this request and determined that there was no concern. I know there's been a lot of traffic studies and traffic counts done recently in the community.
So where would I get that information?
Our city engineer, we can get you in touch with him.
Would have that information?
Yeah, we can make sure you can get traffic
Okay.
counts.
So, and along with that, I'm not sure what capacity Ramsey was built to. But putting in this area that's been approved for 70 units, I don't know how many units will be put in here. And like the gentleman before me, I understand that you're going to develop something, but it could be R8, single-family homes. We're going to have 450 homes in this field, or 429, whatever it is. Times that by maybe 2 or 3 cars per family, per home. how many more cars are gonna come onto Ramsey? My wife works north. She can't turn from this road here to go north on Ramsey. It's hard to get out there in the morning. There's also, let's see, this intersection here, there's the coffee shop, there's a gas station there, an Exxon station. There's been numerous accidents there, people coming in and out of those businesses, and now you want to put more traffic on there. And like I said, I'm not sure how many units they're proposing there, but whatever it is, probably times 2 the number of cars, times 2. So traffic is a big concern on that road. If you travel that road on a regular basis, you would see. I'm not sure where you live, but it's a concern for the people that live there. And as with the other gentleman that spoke before me, I'm not interested in having a 3-story apartment in my backyard, looking in my windows and into my yard. Like I said, I really think that it could be developed and used other ways. And our R8 would be a good solution.
Okay.
Just make it part of our neighborhood.
And we certainly, to address traffic, the commission's very aware of traffic along that corridor. Everywhere in the city is not maxed out, but it's a concern for everybody, and we're coming up with a comprehensive plan shortly, starting to revise that, and we're addressing a lot of those issues, as well as talking to school districts, and so we're aware of a lot of the problems, and as you mentioned, and some of the other people spoke, development is going to be done, and hopefully it's in a sensible way, but we're doing the best we can for everybody right now.
Well, right now, with the permits that are approved and have been issued and are going forth, that's more than enough traffic coming on to Ramsey. And then the school, that's just more. Now you've got people coming from other areas into that school that might not even live in the adjacent neighborhoods. So that really needs to be something that thought out before this gets approved into a high-density area.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. That is the last of the public testimony, but Drew, you can come back up and address some of these questions that came up.
Chairman Messina, Commissioners, again, Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering. For the record, I want to thank everybody for their comments. Whoops, I took notes, so hopefully I address things. Traffic. City engineers reviewed this. He's reviewed the R17 zoning designation for the annexation and for the zone change. And in the staff report, he's commented that he sees no objections. Ramsey's a major collector. Prairie's a principal arterial. They're designed to handle high volumes of traffic. That's what those roads do. And along that lines, that's where you want to put your higher intensity uses. You want to put your commercial districts and your multifamily districts adjacent to those kinds of roads because they can handle those kinds of traffic. The cell tower is not on this property. The cell tower is actually on this property to the north, so I'm not going to address that because it's not a part of this project. Schools. Bear with me for a minute. I'm an engineer, I think, in terms of numbers. In the letter you referenced, it talks about multifamily generating 1 out of every 5 units correlates to 1 school-age student that will join the district. So it's 1 per 5. 15 acres, that's what we have between all 3 of these parcels, roughly 15 acres. If it was all zoned R17, built to maximum density, 15 times 17 is 255 maximum units. Multifamily generates 0.2 students per unit, 1 for every 5. That equates to 51 students at maximum build out if it were multifamily. Single family, if this piece were R8, which is the same zone as Province 20, and kept this at R3, and you blended, let's just say you blended an average of 5 units per acre over all 3 of those parcels. Now remember, This is R17, R8, R3. So that's being a little bit generous. 15 times 5, 75 units. Single family generates 0.62 students per unit. That's based on information that the school districts provided. It's based on research that the National Association of Home Builders has put out that kind of information. I did a bunch of research on this today after we got this letter. So single family 0.62, multifamily is 0.2. So if you were to develop it as single family, 75 units times 0.62 is 47 students. 51 versus 47. So you develop it at multifamily, maximum density, you're gonna get 51 students. Single family at a modest density of 5 units to the acre overall, you're getting 47 students. It's the same amount of students either way on this particular piece of property. So to me, it's not fair to say that apartments there are gonna cause a bigger burden on the school district than if we were to develop that as single family.
Questions for Drew? No? Okay. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to close the public testimony and the public hearing on this item and bring it to the commissioners to have a discussion and hopefully a vote on this item. Discussion? Motion?
Start?
So, yeah, the discussion, I'll start some discussion. I don't know if I'm ready to float a motion, but this is a parcel like I sort of suggested belongs in the city. I think as the comp plan looked at this area, that whole quadrant up there along Prairie that we're seeing change. It's in the comp plan as a transition area. Years ago, it was kind of envisioned as an area that's going to change. I think there was visions of these donut holes, pockets of county making their way into the city. It's kind of, like I said, it's kind of awkward to understand whose jurisdiction, whose codes prevail, who, having this checkerboard situation has been problematic here. I think the comp plan has envisioned this coming into the city and being annexed in. That part, I guess, is in my mind, the no-brainer. This belongs in the city, and I believe that when you look at Fescue Loop project to the north of it, as this comes in to the city, I think it makes sense to look at it as one project and zone it R17 with the adjacent parcel to the north. And as far as the traffic goes, as Tammy pointed out in her staff report, we have to make findings, and the findings for this are really, are the utilities adequate? Yes or no? Sewer's there, water's there, the site is flat, no unique or challenging characteristics. The city engineer has put his professional opinion there that has no objection that the Ramsey traffic can accommodate this, the utilities can accommodate this. So I think it makes sense to annex this at R17.
Okay. Further discussion?
Well, I'm very sympathetic with our responsibility to change and growth and responsibility. And our action tonight may not satisfy some points that were raised, but I think they did raise the issue that we need to, in our comprehensive plan, spend some time on trying to better develop how we're going to change, how we're going to manage growth responsibly. I think no one wants to have a large building next to them looking down upon them. But yet again, there has to be some growth ability. And traffic is an issue, but it's an issue throughout the city. I don't know what we will do about it, but we have our responsibility cut out for us in that strategic plan. I'm going to support this motion, but I challenge us to get into a position where concerns from the local property owners are not similar to what we're hearing tonight. And I think we can do that with a lot of work, a lot of input from the community. But I think we all share, in some fashion, the growth of our city being in a manageable form, keeping the city, and do something about traffic. The traffic is, I don't know what we can do about that, but we certainly can talk about it and maybe come up with something.
Thank you for the comment.
It's all been said. I don't think I can repeat what they've just said. I think we need to bring it into the city. I think it's better off within our purview, and that we will have to walk through this between planning and zoning and the applicant and get the best solution and not harm the adjacencies, but complement them and respect them. And I do believe this developer has that capability. So I feel like we should be bringing this into the city.
Okay, I agree. I think this parcel, as far as just speaking for the annexation, I'm not sure what the discussion is going to be for the next portion of this, which is the actual zone change, which addresses a lot of the issues that were brought up already. But as far as the annexation in this little pocket, I believe that's a good fit for the city and this piece of property. So if I was able to vote on this, which I can as the chairman unless it was a tie, I would support this as well, but we still need a motion to bring this forward.
Just a kind of a point of order and a question, a clarification. The action that we're proposing here is under A119, not to be confused with the follow-on hearing to the other parcel.
Right.
But our action here is annex it at R17. Just make sure you're understand.
Yeah. Okay.
So with that, could I propose a motion that this being a matter that's come before the Planning Commission on March 12th, 2019, and there having been present a person requesting approval of ZC 1- wait a minute, I'm in the wrong spot. Bear with me.
A1-19.
Let me do a do-over here, my apology. Okay, A119, this being a matter that's come before the Planning Commission on March 12th, 2019, and there being a person present requesting approval of item A119, a request for a zoning prior to annexation from county commercial to city R17 zoning district, residential at 17 units per acre. Applicant Ted Burnside for a plus or minus 4.6 acre parcel located on the west side of Ramsey Road and south of Prairie Avenue. Motion that we adopt B1 through B7 statements in our page 1 of the staff report. And as far as the findings go, that the proposal is in conformance with the comp plan. And I would point out that the Ramsey Woodland area is one that's designated as one of transition. It points out that there would be expected pockets of higher density and multifamily units where appropriate in compatible areas. I would highlight that I would suggest that all of those objectives that are listed in our staff report on page 2 be included for the record as being supported by this motion. And in particular, objective 1.12, the community design, this being an infill project, that one of the benefits here is that a project of an infill nature keeps development inside the urbanized area and discourages sprawl. I think it also very strongly supports 1.14, the efficiency in using existing infrastructure, i.e. all the utilities in Ramsey Road, transportation network and so forth. I think it's supported well in 2.02 in providing local workforce development housing. It's supported very well by 3.16 in, again, utilizing existing infrastructure, as well as 3.18 utilizing existing transportation assets. Finding B9, as we have pointed out, as Tammy pointed out in the staff report, all of the facilities and utilities are available. None of the utility or engineering departments have provided any objections. They've indicated that all services are adequate and no conditions with respect to utilities are provided. B10, finding that the site characteristics make this request suitable at this time. This is a flat topography site with no physical challenges or constraints. And B11, that the proposal would not affect the surrounding neighborhood with respect to traffic, character, or existing land use. So with that, the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, would find under this motion that the request for Ted Burnside for zoning prior to annexation should be approved, with one condition that was provided by the building department, that prior to completion of the annexation, the applicant must address any outstanding code violations to the existing structure on site if they are to remain.
I have a first by Ingalls.
I'll second.
I have a second by Fleming. Can we have a roll call, Shannon, please?
Fleming.
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
Lutrip.
Yes.
Okay, item A1-19, annexation into the city is approved. And the next public hearing, and if you want to sign up for this next one, if you haven't signed up already and you want to add something different that we already heard, you're more than welcome to do that. It's ZC 1-19, a zone change for the proposed zone change from R3 to R17. The address is 1781 West Alp Street. Go ahead, Tammy.
Thank you. So this evening, the applicant again is Lake City Engineering, owner Tammy Coeur, and the request is a zone change from R3 to R17, and it's a 4.9 acre parcel on the east side of Ramsey Road. So this is the location of subject property. It is on the west side of Ramsey Road along Alps, which is, a portion of it is improved and this portion is unimproved, and it's south of Prairie. And this is a little closer perspective of the property. There's an existing single-family dwelling unit on the site with an accessory structure. And the property was annexed into the city in July of 2005 with the R3 zoning designation. The applicant has also noted in the narrative, as mentioned, that the R17 zone would allow for the development of a multifamily project in coordination with the previously approved project to the north. This is a view from Ramsey Road looking west along Alps, and the subject property is tucked way back here, and this is the Province 20 subdivision. And this is a portion of the subject property looking northwest from Alps. There is an existing single family on the site, as I mentioned. And another view of the portion of the subject property from Alps. And this is looking north toward Prairie Avenue. And again, looking north toward Prairie Avenue from Alps, and this is a portion of the subject property. And this is a view from Alp Street near the subject property, looking south at the vacant property, and it's located within the city of Coeur d'Alene boundaries. And this is a view from the subject property looking east toward Ramsey Road along Alp Street. So again, the R17 district is intended as the medium to high density residential that permits housing types at a density not greater than 17 units per acre. And I'll cover the four findings this evening for the zone change request. that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan policies. And again, the Ramsey Woodland area is what this is designated as. And it's located again right here. It's in transition. And I won't repeat all of these since they're very similar, but it is in the character of the neighborhood is in transition and should be developed with care. And the street networks, number of building lots, and general land use are expected to change greatly within the planning period. And Ramsey Woodland today and tomorrow are also noted in your staff report. And here are the characters of the Ramsey Woodland neighborhoods. And as mentioned before, they're all noted in your staff report, which also include the multifamily and single-family housing units. Here are the objectives from the comp plan, and they're also in your staff report on pages 4 and 5. And that public facilities and utilities are or are not available and adequate for the proposed use. But I'll briefly cover these again. Stormwater would be addressed at the time of building permit submittal. And the subject property is bordered by Alps Street to the south. Alps must be reconstructed to city standards along the southern frontage of the subject property when any construction on the property begins. Alps Street intersects with Ramsey Road to the east, and no changes to Ramsey Road would be required. The subject property is within Hayden Lake Irrigation District, so the Water Department did not have any comments. And as far as wastewater, the public sewer is available to the project at the west end of Alp Street. And it is adjacent to the Province 20 development to the east. And if they developed a property, the public sewer would need to be extended to meet the 2 and through requirements. And the fire department would address all concerns at site and building permit submittals, and any conditions would be addressed at that time. That the physical characteristics of the site make or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. And again, the property is located off of Alps Street, which is connected to Ramsey Road. A portion, as I mentioned, of Alps is unimproved, but would need to be improved at the time of building permit. The site is flat, and there's an existing single family on the property with an accessory structure on a portion of the site. That the proposal would or would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and or existing land uses. And as I did in the other annexation request, noted that this is a rapidly changing area within Coeur d'Alene. We have had a lot of annexations and zone changes within that area. And the subject property does abut Province 20 to the east and single-family dwelling to the west that remains in the county. And Drew also mentioned the Bluegrass Lodge property is Bluegrass Lodge apartments are currently having building permits in the queue, waiting for approval, but this property would also be integrated into that overall project. As far as finding B11 on traffic, proposed zone change itself would not adversely affect the surrounding area with regard to traffic. However, residential construction under the zone change of R17 may generate 5.6 times the amount of traffic that would be generated under the existing R3 zoning. Ramsey Road does have the available capacity to accommodate additional traffic generated from the subject site, but access in and out, again, would be challenging during peak hours, especially for left turns. Streets and Engineering Department had no objection to the zone change as proposed. And this is a generalized land use. This is the subject property noted here, and their residential uses on this side and this side. This is the existing zoning right now. The current zone is R3. They're asking for R17. This area is also zoned R17 and R8 located here. The Planning Commission must consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. And that's the end of my presentation.
Questions? No?
Yeah, I have a question. We looked at the PUD development south of this, the 8-unit PUD, and at that time we discussed possible traffic light at Wilbur. if this were to go through, we are too close between the Wilbur connection to put a light there. Am I correct? At the
I'm
bottom
not
of-
sure about that, to be honest.
That is correct. We did ask the
We're
city engineer,
too
and
tight.
Alps would not be an appropriate
It
location
would
for
be
a traffic
not,
signal.
because we've got back-to-back, too close. And would we consider getting people down to that? Because the PUD, the 8-unit PUD, they've been very cooperative on interconnectivity from Atlas to Ramsey, and could we consider routing people so that they can make a safer left? Because I think about teenagers, they don't make good decisions, and turning left into heavy traffic is always dicey. And if we could find a way to get down south and pick up the Wilbur light, because my understanding is we have asked them for a light at that street when, in fact, this does get developed out. Worth the consideration and connectivity to that? Am I out
I
of
think
line?
the timing would be the issue. So I think
Correct.
absolutely, but Coeur d'Alene Place is going to be phased.
It's 10
And what
years out
they're going to
phasing.
be doing, I think is it with the Vista Meadows, where they're going to be connecting the sewer up north to connect to that subdivision, but it's just going to be a drivable surface. It's not going to be paved for everybody. It's more just for an access road. So I don't know the exact timing, but
It's
that would
timing.
be ideal once we can have Alps connected and then.
Well, even this is timing.
connect into
How
Coeur
soon
d'Alene
is this going to
Place.
be built? How many cars are going to actually assault this street, and how quickly? And I understand the problem with the left turns, I mean, FedEx turns right, UPS turns right. There's a reason. It's safer. So, that's something we need to keep in mind as this unfolds. That's just what, my biggest concern will be traffic. And yes, the schools are going to be a knock-on, but, we have a school problem across this entire city. And I think that luckily we're paying more attention to it. I don't think we can keep having our kids racing from class to class to find a chair. So, we have a problem, but it's not all driven by this. It's driven by a historically, ignored problem for very many years. It's compounded. So, okay, any other?
Tammy, could you help me? What is the zoning, the current property is zoned R3,
Yes, this is.
and what is to the immediate left or to the west of that?
This is in the county.
Yeah, it's a donut.
Oh, very good.
And so
what
there's a
is to-
single-family dwelling unit on that property right now.
Pardon me?
There is an existing single-family dwelling unit on that
And
property.
then continuing west, what's that green one?
This is R8.
R8, okay. And then to the east going, that other one, is that R8 also?
This is R8, yes.
Okay, then going down,
This is C17L PUD and C17 PUD. And it was annexed into the city in 2002.
and the PUD was established
Gosh,
about that time?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Sean knows.
But anyway, it's a PUD,
Yeah, it is a PUD, yes.
which we have and probably have made decisions on certain heights and so forth in that. Then to the west of that, the other green,
This is R8 PUD.
R8.
That's Coeur d'Alene Place, last edition.
Yeah, Greenstone owns all of this.
Last one.
What I'm going through my mind is what testimony we heard and so forth, and we've got transition zones, and some place we start and some place we stop. And I fighting with myself on the neighborhood character and so forth. If making that property from an R3 to an R17 is disruptive. That may be something a little less, more than an R3, but a little less than an R17. And I feel uncomfortable because I'm sort of picking and choosing. I don't want to do that. But yet again, I look at the transition areas, and it's got to go someplace. Maybe the road is Alps. Maybe that's where we draw the line. But that's not before us right now. It's this piece of property, and I find that I'm struggling with an R17.
Our only other choice in the middle is the R8, is it correct?
Well, R12 zoning would be the next
R12.
zoning district. If the intent for the applicant is to integrate these properties with his overall
Right.
property here for the increased number of units for the apartments, R12 would not allow multifamily.
Right.
My suggestion is not, the applicant can make the decision if they want to change it to something other than R17.
Can you show me the boundary of all of that if it was combined as one? That's what we're not seeing. We're not seeing the big picture. We're
It's
seeing
all
a
this.
slice and a slice and a slice.
Hold this right here.
I want everyone to see this, not just me. I get it, but I want everyone to see it.
So this was the requested annexation. This is the zone change we're discussing now. Oopsie.
Right.
And this is the proposed side of the apartments. So all three of these would be
Right,
combined.
right.
And I'm looking south and you're looking north.
That is all, one owner owns all that.
That's fine.
Yeah, we zoned it already for the upper portion for apartments, R17 a while ago, long time ago. And we
But
just
the zoning
approved-
is
we
dependent
just-
upon the owner.
And we just
necessarily.
approved the annexation for R17, for that one piece that's right above the single-family homes.
Right.
And now we're talking about the zone change, the R17, and that parcel that you were just addressing.
And both the annexation and zone change would go to the planning commission with your recommendation for that zoning, whatever you choose on this one.
And the intention is to unify these three lots into one development.
I think that's a good question for the applicant, but the narrative states that they would like to integrate all of those into the overall project for the apartments.
Which would then, just looking cold turkey at this, you say, oh, is all that going to land out on the lower road? But when you look at the entire parcel, you can manage traffic as an entity of three large lots. Because I know that the R8 folks are paranoid because they're going to have this load of cars landing out on their street. And I think we have to look at it as a bigger, broader picture and a solution as a large unified lot instead of just this singular thing coming down and something on the top, and it's not giving us that story right now. So,
And I think that's a great question for the applicant to see what their intention might be down the road,
right,
without it being a PUD.
right. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All
Terry.
right, thanks.
State your name, Drew, and I'll swear you in again.
Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir. That's not my PowerPoint presentation. We'll go back out here. Again, Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering, representing the owner, Ted Burnside and Tammy Coeur, and also Copper Basin Construction as the developer. The property we're talking about now is the black outlined property. Right here, we just talked about this one in red, now we're talking about this one outlined in black. Again, Idaho code requires certain standards for zoning as they do with annexation. Coeur d'Alene has adopted the same findings that need to be made for an annexation zoning and for a zone amendment, B8 through B11 here. Tammy went through those in her staff report. We've went through them in the narrative. I'll touch briefly on them again here. The proposal is in conformance with the comp plan. Again, there's a full comprehensive plan analysis in the narrative and the package that we submitted. There's one in the staff report. Tammy's gone through that. Ramsey Woodland transition area, according to the comprehensive plan, allows multifamily. It allows neighborhood commercial service zones, as we discussed previously, proximity to parks and walking trails and major streets. And I'll touch on the streets here in a minute. All the same as we discussed in the last hearing. All of those still apply. B9, public facilities and utilities are available. Again, wastewater is available. Water is Hayden Lake Irrigation District. They have the willingness and the capacity to serve it. Get into streets and Commissioner Fleming's comments a little. I'll talk a little bit about that. When we proposed this project, I'm jumping off topic a little bit. The apartment site up here, you can see fescue loops around and has 2 points of access. That is a requirement not only of your city engineer, but also the fire department. When you hit a certain threshold or number of units, obviously you have to have multiple points of access, as Commissioner Fleming had discussed. That helps alleviate traffic, that helps for emergency services, that helps for all sorts of reasons. If this zone change were to be approved to R17, obviously, as Tammy had said, our goal is to combine these 3 parcels into one larger project. We would have multiple points of access. Alps would be improved during site development to city standards along our frontage, so that would be one point of access. You would have a point of access, I'm assuming up here where the existing approaches were, where we had previously planned them, and you would probably have a second one onto Ramsey. So I'm envisioning at least 3 points of access. And again, Alps Street, and I don't have a bigger picture, but Alps is going to go all the way through. It's going to tie into this development here. It'll eventually tie into Coeur d'Alene Place. Again, it was discussed, there's a traffic signal that's planned at Wilbur. That's going to help tremendously. Whether traffic gets through Coeur d'Alene Place from a timing standpoint or not, the traffic signal is going to generate gaps in the traffic to help those turning movements. So not there today, but it's all coming. It's all planned for it. Ramsey, again, major collector street, Prairie, principal arterial. These are streets that, and your city engineer said it, they're designed to handle high volumes of traffic. I think the Prairie Avenue can handle 35,000 trips per day. That's how big of a street it is. That's a lot of cars. It can handle it. They're designed to handle it. B10, the physical characteristics of the site make it suitable for the request. Again, very similar to the previous one. It's a flat site. There's an existing single-family residence on it down here, but the rest of the site is flat. It's barren. There's no characteristics that would make it not developable. And then B11, and this is kind of the big one, Commissioner Lutrip touched on a little bit, adversely affect a surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic. I already discussed traffic. Neighborhood character and land uses. So I'm going to go back to the surrounding properties. We have R17 to the north. We just approved R17 to the west. We have the R8 here, but we also have C17 down here in this PUD. C17 can be a variety of things. I know the PUD is approved on there, but it's a C17 zoning. So you could have apartments there, you could have gas stations there, you could have a number of things on that C17 zoning. You've also got C17 on the east side of Ramsey. So does it fit with surrounding land uses? I would say it does. You've got R17, and as you're working your way to the west, you've got R8 over here. And I don't have the bigger map that shows some of the other R3 over here, but you're making that transition from higher density to lower density. So we do feel that it meets that characteristic. I think I'll stand for questions now. Yes.
The C17 to the bottom there, that's a PUD?
I lost my cursor. This C17 right here
Yes.
is all part of the Coeur d'Alene Place PUD, correct?
Right.
Correct.
And what are the provisions on that PUD as far as height and apartments and
I
so
would
forth?
defer that to your staff. I'm not a part of that project, so I can't answer that question.
So the C17L and C17 PUD did not limit the height, it's just the underlying zone that would govern.
It did not limit?
Yeah, it didn't change from what the existing zoning would allow. So a lot of times PUDs will limit themselves in some manner, and this one did not in this case.
Okay, so then what is the difference in density and height and so forth between the C17 and the R17?
So let me rephrase what I think I heard the question to be, is what the maximum height is for each one of those.
What that would be, yes.
Yeah, the density is based upon the number that follows the designation. So 17 units per acre is what that stands for, and that's a theoretical number. You still have to live within your height and your setbacks, et cetera. You have to provide your parking. So as far as the height goes, C17, if 51% or more of the floor area is commercial, there's no height limit. If it's 51% or more residential, then it's a 45-foot maximum height.
So the C17 can be larger buildings at times?
Yes.
Drew, what's your vision of what all 3 pieces of property might be as far as what you guys want to do. I know it's not tied into a PUD. Give some, perhaps some insight on height, density, units that you feel this development and the developer are going to kind of do, so that perhaps the commissioners can get a better feel for that. And I'll ask you one other question.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with the project that's on Ramsey, south of Kathleen. That is an apartment type of complex, and I pass that quite a bit because I do live in this area. Is that going to be a similar type of project?
So I think you're referring to the Centennial Pines apartment project.
It's the new,
Correct.
yes.
Right next to the old CNI building there. That was a Copper Basin project. We
Right.
did that one a year and a half ago. I think we were in front of you guys maybe 2 years ago. Same developer, Copper Basin product. I would envision you would see something very similar to that.
And that is a what?
Those are two-story buildings. They're 6-unit and 12-unit two-story buildings. I don't know the exact.
And with garages where?
Garages underneath. So you pull in, you have 6 garages underneath, 2 units in the back, and then 4 units above.
And that's a 2-story building, and how high is that building?
Two-story,
Approximately?
35? It's not even 45.
he's gonna look it up and tell me, but it's.
Less than 45 feet?
Less than 45 feet.
Okay.
Less than, I would venture to say less than 40, but he's.
To
looking-
give, so perhaps, if there's some questions about what might be there in height and density, what
It's
it
no,
might look
no
like.
taller than a 2-story house. It's a 2-story building. So, again, we would combine all 3 parcels into one project, 15 acres, like I said previously. It would be an apartment project. I'm not gonna kid you or lie. That's what we would like to do there. That's what we envision to do there. Centennial Pines is a great example of the type of product they build. If you're familiar with the Tullamore area, they've built some apartments over there, very similar, same style apartment. It's a 2-story, 6-unit, 12-unit complex. I would envision that you would see that type of product here. Multiple points of access. You're going to have access to Alps. You're going to have at least 1, possibly 2 accesses to Ramsey to help alleviate traffic for emergency services purposes, for traffic flow purposes, et cetera.
Yeah, and I'd say the one on Ramsey, off the top of my head, I'd say that's probably 35 feet in that general vicinity. You got a garage and
Yeah.
family units and then a pitched roof.
Yep.
So you're going to have somewhere in that 35, 38 feet
8-foot floor,
of
8-foot
height.
floor and a roof, yeah.
Right. And again, this project, if it's similar to that, the rules and regulations are going to be dictated to parking and swells and open
Correct.
space and snow collectivity and things of that nature.
Garbage collection, mailbox collection.
So it's
et
not going
cetera,
to
et
be
cetera. Yep.
apartment, 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 apartment. It's going to have hopefully some open space and some garages or something
Somebody's
in that
having fun
nature.
upstairs.
Fun.
Yeah. So I hope that answered perhaps some of the questions or that you might have about what perhaps might be there.
Any other questions for me at this time? I'll come back up
Okay,
at
Drew.
rebuttal.
You'll have some time to come back up again, I'm
Thank you.
sure. Dawn Atrium again, is opposed, did not indicate whether or not wanted to speak. Janet Roberts is opposed, and you do wish to speak? No? She left, okay. Mark Roberts is opposed, did not indicate if he wanted to speak. David Hurdo is opposed and does wish to speak? Yes. Okay, David, come on back up again. Again, just state your name so I can swear you in again.
Sure. David Hurdle.
Do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay.
So, as we're looking at these 3 parcels, you're effectively giving the go-ahead for 15 acres of apartment buildings if you approve the zoning. And just a quick calculation, the engineer, he likes numbers, and so if you do 17 units per acre, 2 cars per unit, and then you include this area that's going to have 429 homes, 2 cars per home there, and with the added school traffic, you're coming up with, you know, probably 1,500, 2,000 more cars accessing Ramsey. Now, he makes a point of multiple access points, but they still all feed Ramsey. So I don't see how that helps. It's still dumping traffic onto Ramsey in that north section where, you know, we all have to get out in the morning. And, you know, 15 acres of apartment buildings, that's a lot of units. So that's it all.
And just for clarification, and the applicant could address this again, when there's a zone that says R17, 17 units per acre, take that, how many acres might be on there, but you've got to subtract out of that streets and sidewalks.
Absolutely,
So,
you're losing area to
yeah,
to
so you're
services.
not, you know, I'm not saying you're not correct in your concerns. It's just that, you know, you're not going to get 17, if you have 17 acres, you're not going to get a unit on every acre, let's say, or something of that nature, or 3, how many you can get. So, and that's up to the applicant to address that, perhaps with, maybe
Well,
he can give you a rough idea to satisfy your question.
That goes back to what we talked about height. Is it going to be 2-story? Is it going to be 3-story? That's a big difference on density. So, you know, I don't see any drawing there that shows me
Correct.
what it's going to be.
Right.
No elevations.
Right.
It's all like, well, this is what we want it to look like. Well, when it comes down to what the developer wants and how much money he wants to make, what's it going to be? We have a height restriction of, was it 45 feet? That's 3 stories. So,
Well, that's
it's
3
kinda-
stories, and then you need a roof on top of that.
right.
So it'll be 2 stories with a roof, let's say.
No, I think you could go 3 stories at 45 feet with
Yeah.
with a 412 pitch.
With the roof on top of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you can.
So there's the potential. 15 acres of 3-story apartment buildings. That's what we're looking at.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. Appreciate your input. Thank you. Ted Burnside is in favor, does not wish to speak. Tammy Coeur is in favor and does not wish to speak. Melissa Jensen is opposed but did not indicate she wanted to speak. Chris Jensen, again opposed and did not indicate, does not wish to speak. Monica Hart is opposed and did not indicate whether or not she wanted to speak. And Greg Gervasi is in favor and did not want to speak. Come on back up, Drew.
Again, Chairman Messina, Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering for the record. Traffic, and I think Tammy had a, which one? Well, she doesn't. I was hoping she had one that showed more area. This one will have to do. Not all, and I don't know how many units are planned for Coeur d'Alene Place. He's thrown around 432. I don't know if that's the number. Whatever it is. There's going to be multiple points of ingress, egress, and access to Coeur d'Alene Place when that develops. Not all of that traffic, whether it's 432 units or 600 units or 200 units, not all of that traffic is going to be accessing Ramsey Road. It could go out any number of accesses through Coeur d'Alene Place. So I don't think it's a fair statement to say that all of that traffic is coming onto Ramsey Road. It's going to go to Atlas. It's going to go, wherever it goes. And again, Ramsey Road is a major collector. It's designed to handle a lot of traffic. Your city engineer's reviewed it. He says he has no objection to it. It can handle that density. Speaking of density, it sounds to me like there's a little bit of confusion. R17, I think as Chairman Messina had stated, means we can do 17 units to the acre, independent of height, independent of 2-story apartment versus 3-story apartments. We can do 2-story apartments and still get 17 units to the acre, 15 units to the acre. We can do 3-story apartments and get the same density. Density and height are independent issues. No different than single-family lot allows a single-story house or a 2-story house. They're independent issues. For example, the apartment project just north of Maverick, right down the road from here, has all 3-story buildings. That has 17 units to the acre. It's the same density. It's R17. That's the allowable maximum density in Coeur d'Alene, whether you do 3 stories or 2 stories. So I think there's some confusion as to density as it relates to height. Just because you can go higher or 3 stories doesn't mean you're going greater density. You're still limited by the R17 zoning, which allows 45 foot. Wanted to clarify that a little bit. Any other questions for me or anything else you guys would like me to discuss?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right. This time I'm going to close the public testimony on this particular hearing and give it to the commissioners to have discussion. But before we start that, I would like to mention that as far as traffic goes, and we get this every time there's a hearing, and it seems like the traffic is pointed at whatever that particular hearing we have. And it's surrounded by other developed areas. I feel sometimes there's a burden put on whatever application we're hearing that traffic is going to be generated and it's going to make everything twice as worse or 3 times as worse. Traffic in the city is just a somewhat of a problem. Traffic along that corridor is congested, it moves, perhaps not as fast as some people want, or maybe too fast. But again, there's a school there, and I don't know how many children, and my kids went to that school, come out of that parking lot at a given point, and they perhaps live in that neighborhood, but they add to Ramsey, just as the traffic in Maverick gas station. They live in that, they come out on Ramsey Road. So whatever the development is in certain areas, it adds to the traffic, but it isn't the cause of the traffic problems in those general areas. That's my feeling on traffic, and we're trying to do the best we can. We did a very intense traffic study throughout the city. Hopefully we'll get to the point of changing some signals and things like that that would alleviate traffic, not in this area, but in other areas of the city. I hear the concerns of the neighbors about height and density and traffic. This area, again, is in an area for development. So that's my feel kind of on traffic and this particular item in front of us. I welcome the rest of the commissioners to weigh in on this.
Well, just a discussion item, if I could.
Sure.
I angst a little bit at, the R17. I think Commissioner Lutrip was kind of angsting a little bit and shared some of that. On the other hand, R3 is an odd fit. If you look at what surrounds it, C-17 to the south and everything around it, doesn't really, R3 doesn't make a lot of sense. So what is the right kind of fit there? And, maybe R17 you could say is a little generous, or if that's the way to say it. But if that's a negative, that on the positive side, I think the fact that these 3 parcels are able to work together cohesively and get planned together, I'm confident that this developer, with the track record that they've had, would develop a better project if they were all the same zone. And aside from that, I'd point out that this is an infill project, and there are benefits community-wise. Again, we're all about discouraging sprawl at this point as Coeur d'Alene and the area gets kind of built out, and we're losing Rathdrum Prairie open space, and we look at these hills that surround us, and I would rather have quality infill projects than lopping off another quarter section on the prairie and expanding the city limits. We have infrastructure there already for the most part. The utilities are there. Ramsey is there. Growth is coming. People want to live here. And for every person that's there, rather than up on some hillside that we're going to expand into or out another quarter section of the prairie. So I think it's important to have workforce housing and to have discouraged sprawl.
Peter, go ahead.
Do we have such a thing as infill projects anymore? I thought we did away with our infill.
Are you talking about pocket housing?
Yeah, we got rid of
Well,
pocket.
Commissioner Ingles had mentioned infill. This is an infill project. I
We
didn't.
don't have anything that's specifically called an infill project. I think it's just more if it's surrounded by city limits. He's referring to that as being kind of an infill area.
Yeah, I'm just referring in my own term of, development that goes there rather than leapfrogging out and lopping off another chunk of open space.
And I don't mean to pick on you, John. You're much more knowledgeable of the city than I am. And you mentioned affordable housing. Is that part of this?
We have a comp plan finding that we want to try to find and support housing that is, affordable for all various classes of people.
And does that?
And not everybody can afford a $290,000 single-family home or whatever they're going for these days.
So this is affordable because it's an apartment?
More affordable. I wouldn't say it's affordable, but no housing is affordable anymore.
And then sprawl. Maybe this is something for a when we talk about a comprehensive. I'm not so sure I understand what sprawl is.
I'm kind of taking a term from, the way, like, if you're familiar with planning, with the way Washington State does things in their Growth Management Act, as I understand it, where you have, in our case, like an ACI, and there's strong incentive to try to maximize and fill in, fill in the donuts, fill in the open space. It's fill in the leftover open areas before adding to the overall footprint of the city. Because when you expand beyond the city, you're adding utilities and
Services and
Services
coverage and police and fire, all.
But
going
they
through the
pay
road.
for that when you're annexed.
I'm just talking about the efficiencies again,
Right,
where
it's
we already plow that street. It's already there. We're already maintaining it, rather than sprawling out and adding new burden.
Well, we're talking about your Swiss cheese or your donut holes. I think we've ended up where this little development here, which is what R3 now, or the one that been talked about. We had a couple people that lived there. That's R3 or R8.
That's R8.
R8.
That's R8. We're
They're
looking at the R3.
they're developing it to the donut hole here, aren't they? Well, I'm still fighting, and I don't know who's going to win. I think that R17 is too much. I think R8 is more appropriate. I understand, that it's the same property owner, and they can do things if it's all zoned the same. It gives them certain latitudes, which is fine. But I just wonder how disruptive that is to the existing R8 neighborhood by going to R17. And I'm fighting with the division line to some degree is just to the north of that, where you're coming into Coeur Lane Place and the green part and so forth. And so, well, that's where I'm at.
Lynn, you have any insight on this?
Well, I think I like to see cohesion rather than yet another R12 or an R8 or a randomness. I think that, economy of effort and I think we want more unified appearance and treatment rather than again, kind of chipping away at some oddballs showing up. I think there's better cohesion leaving it all as the R17 instead of throwing another zinger at an R12 is going to be, 12 houses all in single lots with one street going through the middle, and that's an anomaly as well. So we're going to have the PUD 8 below us. Short of saying go 8, there's no sense in, divvying it up to a 12. You're either at an 8 or you're at a 17. And I think you're better off just cohesive and stay the 17. That would be my thought. I think you're probably going to get some park space in here, but not seeing the actual development's very hard to tell. But you'll get more public domain and spaces because of the R17. Then I would think you'll get some park space or outdoor areas. Am I wrong?
There's not a requirement
There's
for
nothing?
open space
Okay.
with apartments.
Okay. Be nice for the apartment dwellers who don't have a yard. So yeah, I think I'd stay with the 17.
Yeah, and I'd have to agree on some of the statements. I think looking at it as one large parcel with the ability to function as one large parcel with connectivity and sidewalks and access points and perhaps some trails to the school or things like that, then having one parcel be independent of everything else, and hopefully the developer will continue his good standards and the community efforts that they have done in the past. And I know height's concern, and we talked about height, and I'm not going to dwell on that. The height issue is always going to be concerned to any piece of property that adjoins another piece of property in the city, unfortunately. With that said, I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
So there's some benefit you were mentioning by having one developed for the same zoning for
No, I
the,
didn't say one developer. I said one
One-
piece of property under one umbrella. Put
and
it that way.
and you're talking about trails, open space and so forth?
Not open space. I said
Trails?
connectivity.
Connectivity?
Connectivity.
And do we know we're going to get that, or should we make it a condition?
Well, I would imagine this being the same type of product in all three parcels, as I believe the applicant representative indicated, there would definitely be some sort of connectivity in all three, because it wouldn't, in my opinion, make sense to have three parcels and they don't connect together when they all are the same product. So that when you have access to one point on the lower portion, you can access that to get to the upper portion, to get to your apartment and your garage within all three parcels being together. That's what I meant, connectivity. And as far as, we can't say put trails in there, but hopefully we mentioned the school district and the developer working with the school district to perhaps have some sort of access point, so the children that live in that three parcels that are somewhat connected might be able to get to that school without a parent having to come out and drive and get on the street and get in the parking lot for that new school that's going to be there. Hopeful that will happen. I can't say it will happen.
But we can only be hopeful. We can't direct, or we can't take action.
That's a question for legal, condition-wise.
We can only be hopeful, but I think our best chance is to set them up for that success of integration, which is to have a common zoning for the whole property. That's my feeling.
Because this has not been brought to us forward as a PUD,
Nope.
which changes the dynamic.
But if we're opening the door for them to be their most successful, I think, by having it all one.
There's discussion over there. I don't know what that's about.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, if we can have a motion on the item?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Okay, Coeur d'Alene, findings in order. This matter having come before the Planning Commission on March 12th, 2019, and there being present a person requesting approval of a ZC1-19, a proposed plus or minus 4.9 acre zone change from R3 residential at 3 units per acre to city R17 zoning district at residential at 17 units per acre. The applicant being Tammy Coeur, the location plus or minus 4.9 south of Prairie Avenue and on the west side of Ramsey Road along Alps Street. We'll accept the B findings, justification for the design criteria, standards, and facts relied upon, and this is standard boilerplate that we had a meeting, that we went through all the zoning, items B1 through B7. Moving on to B8, that this proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive policies as follows. We've addressed all the stormwater, wastewater coming through, fire and life safety is all covered, that we have efficiency of road access in a large series of thoroughfares, that there will be connectivity, and it is with managed growth. We're taking back from the county into our purview a donut hole, and that we are providing workforce housing and a higher density in a heavily trafficked area, yes, but we are very well aware of the traffic issues. B9, the public facilities and utilities are available and adequate for the proposed use. Everyone's come forward and weighed in on that, and we're covered. Hayden Lake Irrigation District, issues with fire, all that will be addressed during the development phase. B10, that the physical characteristics of the site do make it suitable for the request at this time. The site is flat, vacant, and has some trees, but nothing of significance. B11, that the proposal would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and, well, there's fields and there are adjacent residences, and we're well aware of that, and I think the developer is as well, and that the existing land uses will be unified on this one parcel. In conclusion, the Planning Commission pursuant to the aforementioned finds that the request of Tammy Coeur for a zone change as described in the application should be approved with no special conditions at this time.
I have a motion and a first by Fleming. I need a second.
Second.
I second from Ingalls. Roll call, Shannon?
Fleming?
Yes.
Ingalls?
Yes.
Lutrip?
No.
Item ZC-1-19 passes. Okay, next item on our agenda, and thank you for waiting, is ZC-2-19, proposed zone change from MH8 to R17. And I'll be getting a presentation from Sean.
Sit up here.
Thank you, George.
All right, good evening, Planning Commission. As Chairman Messina alluded to, there is a zone change request. This is another request for R17, although the underlying zone is different. So this is ZC-219, and this property is located commonly known as 601 West Niter Avenue. The applicant is here. James Casper is the Executive Director for Habitat for Humanity of North Idaho. And the request is from MH8 to R17. And this is a piece of property that is 0.825 of an acre, so it is under an acre, and it was previously owned by the city. Let me read something real quick here. The subject property was deemed as surplus by the city's water utility due to the inability to support a viable well as a source of water for the city, and was auctioned through a sealed bid process. In 2018, Habitat of Humanity was the highest bidder and has successfully transferred legal ownership. So this is the subject property here. You can see it is bound just by a tiny little bit here on the west-hand side by Howard Street, a large sweeping corner along Niter, and then also along Fruitland Lane. So you can see that Fruitland Lane area, and actually this is the Fruitland area in the comprehensive plan, and it is transitioning. I counted this up, and there was 27 zone changes since 1984 to current, and every single one of them has been approved. So it is a transition area. Yeah. Okay, so the differences here, and we had discussed at the last hearing item, R17 and R3 and R8 and all the different zones, but we didn't discuss MH8, which is kind of a little different of an animal in our residential zoning districts. And it is a residential density of 8 units per gross acre. The request is 17 units per gross acre at an R17. So one of the things I always like to point out in a zone change request is that, and I heard Peter kind of allude to it at the last one, is can we put some conditions on this? And it's very tough to condition a zone change because of all of these different uses that are allowed by right. So if that changes hands, you could be tying the hands of a future owner that may not want to do what was envisioned at that time. And all of these uses by right are allowed if that zone changes. So I caution you on making those types of conditions on a zone change. Now for a special use permit or a PUD or something like that, that is perfectly acceptable. All right, so this is also in your staff report as well, but not at least the zoning matrix part of it, but the subject property I wanted to put up here so you could visualize, and hopefully without confusing you, all of the different parts that are moving here. So in an MH8, a mobile home, that's what MH stands for in this, is the maximum height is 19 feet. So it's a fairly low height, and that's for a mobile home. And you know, they're pre-constructed and brought on the site. Sometimes they're placed on foundations, sometimes they're placed on ribbons. But anyways, the maximum height is 19 feet. Now in that same zone, you are allowed to build a single family dwelling unit, and that dwelling unit can be 32 feet in height. So the height in your principal building area can be anywhere from 19 to 32 foot in height, depending on what that type of unit is. Inside of the rear yard, your accessory heights, where your garage can go, can either be 14 or 18 feet height, depending on what that roof pitch is. If it's 2.5, 12 or greater, you can go 18 feet. If it's under 2.5, 12, your maximum height is 14. So the yards, your setbacks also differ as well. So in an MH8, you have 20 from the front. You have a 5 and 10 from the sides, depending on if there's an alley. Street side is always 10, and then the rear is 15. So generally, we see most of our districts have a rear yard setback of 25 feet. In this case, you get an extra 10 feet to build on in an MH8. So if a standalone lot in an MH8 zone requires 5,500 square feet and 50 foot of frontage, just like all of our other R zones that do for single family. So there isn't a change there. Where the change in density happens is for a mobile home park, which is the MHP here, and that will allow you 3,150 square feet per unit. As I run through this, I'll go back up to the top. So in an R17, a single-family dwelling unit can be 32 feet, just like it can in an MH8, but a multifamily unit, which is 3 units attached or more, can go to 45 feet, as we were discussing in the earlier item. The same for your accessory heights. Your setbacks do change, though, however, for multifamily. You have 20 from the front, you have 10 from either side, regardless if there's an alley. You have 20 if it is a street side, and then your rear is 20 as well. So with a single family house, you have a rear of 25, but with a multifamily unit, you have a rear of 20. So you do gain 5 feet there. But you do give it up on the street side, or on the interior side. Instead of a 5 and 10, it's always going to be 10. So single-family dwelling in R17 does require the same amount that it does in MH8 at 5,500 square feet. And the difference in density is, instead of a mobile home park requiring 3,150 square feet, an R17 will allow a density at 2,500 square feet per unit. So what does all of this mean? So MH8, the way that the property is currently configured, and this is theoretical because the lot size could change, frontages, there's a lot of moving pieces here, but just running the density numbers, you could have up to 6 separate lots or 11 spots in a mobile home park, the way that the property is currently zoned. Or under R17, you could have 6 separate lots as an MH8, or up to 14 units as a multifamily structure. So it's a gain of 3 units. The difference is that a mobile home a mobile home park would cap that at 19 feet. You'd have them spread all over the place. It would be that single level, where an R17 would push them together and attach them and allow some additional height. So it's just a different product type. So there are some required findings for a zone change. There are 4 of them, and I'll run through them now. Finding B88 is that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan designates this area as fruitland, and this property does fall within the city limits. It is in a transition area, which is green. This is the subject property right here. And as you can see, when the comprehensive plan was done, NITR didn't even go all the way to Howard at the time. It's missing from our map, and that will be updated with the future update. This is the future, or the fruitland boundary in black. This is the fruitland today. Fruitland is an area that is home to diverse land uses. And then fruitland tomorrow, I underlined the most pertinent items here, is generally this area is envisioned as a commercial corridor with adjacent multifamily uses and will maintain a mix of the housing types that currently exist. Characteristics of fruitland neighborhoods will be that single-family and multifamily housing should be located adjacent to compatible uses, and uses that strengthen neighborhoods are encouraged. I did list out the plan objectives here. There are quite a few of them. They can be found in your staff report. Suffice it to say that community design, efficiency, connectivity, economic and workforce development, pedestrian and bicycle environment, managed growth, neighborhoods twice, as well as housing, affordable and workforce housing, capital improvements, and city services are all fall under the purview of this request. I didn't quite have enough room to put the 4.06, which is public input. I always put that, so I thought if I had more room, I would have stuck it in there. Thought I'd mention. Oh, I did.
You
there
did.
We go. Looks
It's
like I had
there.
a leftover one. So there is public participation. All right, so finding B9 is that the public facilities and utilities are or are not available and adequate for the proposed use. So on page 5 and 6 of your staff report is the comments from all of the city departments. Suffice it to say that each department said that there is adequate utilities there. The one item that I could mention here or should mention is that the water department stated that there is a small well on the site and that the applicant could use that for irrigation purposes but not for domestic purposes. That's their choice. All right, so finding B10 is that the physical characteristics of the site do or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. The property is very flat. It does have some trees on there. There's a grove of smaller trees and there's a couple of larger pine trees that are on the site, but there are no topographical or physical constraints. So here are some pictures to reflect what I was just talking about. This is taken from the Fruitland side. This is looking west. On the north-hand side is a mobile home. It's listed as a mobile home park. I believe that's what it is called. And then on this southern side is a single-family house. This is that narrow access point that would come from Fruitland. This is a close-up showing where this existing block wall exists now, and then there's also a fence here. It's all the same property, though. Along here, there's just a gap in the separation. This picture was taken from NITR. This is looking kind of northwest. This is that block wall that we were just looking at on the previous slide. This is the grove of trees that I was talking about with some larger pine trees in the back. It's very tough to see, but there is sidewalk in this area. And then this is further west, looking at where NITR terminates into Howard, and then there's a small little bit of frontage on the subject property right here next to the stop sign. All right, so finding B11 is that the proposal would or would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and or existing land uses. So we did get a response from our city engineer. He said that NITR has the available capacity to accommodate additional traffic generated from the subject site. That also is in your staff report. as well as, this is from the planning department, is that this area, Fruitland, has changed dramatically. There is a number of different projects that were recently under construction or continue to be under construction. Pocket housing seems to be something that was pretty popular along Fruitland. Although we don't have pocket housing currently, we are in-house working on that. Those are associated with West Cherry Lane, West Link Lane, West Clady Lane, as well as there's some mobile home infill along West Lake City Lane and the spurs that are to the north and south that adjoin West Lake City Lane. And then to the south of the subject property, there are 2 civic uses. This was property that was zoned MH8. It was rezoned to R17. There was an approved PUD, and that is now known as the Kathy Reed House and the Lynn Peterson facilities directly south. And those 2 facilities can be found here and here. This is the land use map. As you can see, this property is vacant. There's not very much vacant property in this area anymore. This is the last piece here, and this is currently owned by the city and has been put on the market before, but there was no offers. So the yellow is like single-family homes. This is, it says MFD, which is the multifamily, but it does have the PUD overlay on it. The lighter green color is the mobile home park. So it looks like this is mobile home park here, and then mobile homes, according to this map, is the darker green area. Commercial in red, and then civic in blue. So this is the zoning map. As you can see, a large portion of these properties are currently zoned MH8. To the south is R17 PUD. This looks like this is R17, and C17 directly east from the subject property. So with that, I would wrap up my staff report. Public notice was provided. It was placed in the paper as shown earlier in the slide, as well as everybody within 300 feet was notified, all property owners. So with that, I'll end my staff report and presentation. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Sean, I got a question. Given the shape of this property and under the R17, you can do duplexes or multifamily homes. Given setbacks and parking, it would be, I would imagine, somewhat of a challenge to get a lot of units on this particular property. Would that be a true statement, since the shape of it and how it sits on the street?
That is a true statement. I did talk to Terry Pickle about that. That's one of the reasons why the water department ended up with the property, is just because of the shape of the property. Right. It's got a lot of frontage, but it narrows up very much so on both the east and the west ends. Mm-hmm. And so depending on which frontage you call your front yard, and then the rear is the opposite of that, and then you have 2 sides, your building envelope gets pretty tiny.
It's right in the middle of that.
Real quick, yes. Yeah.
Okay,
So
because I'm familiar with that property, and it'd be interesting to see what they might come up with down the road. But I didn't want to get into just the discussion we just had before on multifamily and having a lot of units next to neighbors and stuff. So I just wanted that for clarity. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can they change their frontage to Fruitland in order to meet some of that?
Any one of the frontages, they can call their front yard.
Okay.
It's their choice since it's
Okay.
vacant. And then the rear is opposite, and then you have your 2 sides, depending on which
curve
one
on
they call the
Niders,
front.
yeah, it can get kind of busy. I do a lot of that cut through, and that can get pretty busy down there.
I contemplated coming up with a graphic to show you the different scenarios, but I thought I would just end up confusing you
sort
even
it.
more
We'll have to
by
figure it
trying
out.
to do that. Suffice it to say, it's largely 20 feet from every dimension, every frontage,
It's tricky. Oh, well.
and then
Let
10
them
to
figure
the
it out.
neighbor to the north.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
There only had 2 people sign up. Robert Shaw. Yep. You wish to, you're in
Mr.
favor and you
Chairman.
do wish to speak?
Mr. Chairman, the applicant.
That is the applicant? Or
No.
No, the applicant.
Oh,
is
the
there.
applicant here. You didn't sign up to, all right, come on up.
I apologize, I didn't realize I needed to sign on there.
I thought perhaps you might have been the applicant. I'm not sure sometime. Most of the applicants sign up on the sheet, or they do not?
They don't always
James
sign up.
Casper, we'll just put him on.
Okay. I apologize for that.
No problem.
Just state your name.
James Casper, Habitat for Humanity.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman Messina and Council or Commission members. I'll admit this is my first rodeo, so I apologize
No
for
problem.
not signing up appropriately.
It's okay.
So-
I just learned you didn't have to.
Yeah. A couple things, and I'll go brief on this first section. For those of you not familiar with Habitat, of course, we're developing a different kind of product than many other developers. Our goal is, to create low-income, affordable housing, and we do that through, generally typical construction, but we have a few tricks we pull with volunteers and other things like that. But the idea is to get something that's lower cost. The real issue that comes before us with this property and the challenges have to do with the climate in the area. There was some discussion earlier, but the reality is that single family is not affordable in any format. So we have another unit we're finishing in Hastings, which is near 15th, kind of by the Boys and Girls Club, if you know that part of the neighborhood. It's a 0.15 or 0.2 acres. It's basically as small as a city lot you can get. 3-bedroom house, 1,200 square feet, 1 bathroom, no garage. I mean, we're building basic units at Habitat. That appraisal is $244,000. Now, we're not selling that to our buyers, in terms of that initial entry, but later, whenever somebody moves or sells that house, there's no version of that that is affordable for the lower end of the income. To give you an example, and I encourage you to kind of check this out, you can do affordability measures, right? You go to Realtor.com and tell you how much house you should spend. If you make $60,000, have a little bit of debt, $500 a month, maybe car payments, stuff like that, you shouldn't buy more than about $195,000 for affordable. $60,000 is half of Kootenai County. So at least from our perspective, and we're always going to have a slightly different perspective than the rest of the community, the density becomes the only solution to affordability, both near-term and long-term. The affordability of single-family houses is questionable on any time frame. Even a modest return, 3% a year, adds up pretty quickly over 20, 30 years from now, in the long-term view of affordability. Land costs also become an issue. Basically, we're forced to look at maximizing the available space use of any piece of dirt we buy because it's just expensive to buy dirt to get a developable lot and be able to build on that. We really have to be around $40,000 to $50,000 per unit, and the most lots in the city will not get you there in terms of cost without going to density. This is just an example. I know it's hard to see. These are all the lots for sale in the city limits of Coeur d'Alene pulled yesterday, under 150,000. There's 19 total. I mean, just for dirt. It starts very quickly to go from 60,000 up to 80, 90,000. So really, I mean, in terms of building something affordable, it's about density on that end of the scale of building. This is actually an example of what we had drew up to try and split it into single family lots. The problem you run into is that the frontage becomes a very big issue. You can't do frontage off of Nider effectively for even a single lot because there's 30 feet roughly here. So you still have to have frontage off of Fruitland. You still have to have frontage attached for Nider to get back to 50 total feet of frontage for a single family lot. And then you end up with these kind of wonky shaped, long, thin, single family lots because of the way that the entire development is shaped. And basically it limits it slightly. I mean, 3 units is still reasonable, but by changing to single family, we believe we can move to maybe 4 or 5. There is a limitation. You have these long, skinny sections of the property. There's going to be parking issues and other just space concerns with setbacks, but we believe that the height also helps solve some of that issue, being able to go to 2 stories. So I'll keep it brief. Most of this I kind of touched on, but the primary motivation too for Habitat is to create something that's an alternate unit. I mean, we are looking for something that's not single family at this point. We don't believe, in our estimation right now, that we can develop single family that's going to actually be an affordable asset for the community on any time scale. We're also looking at even shared equity. There's always been some sort of format of shared equity in the properties with Habitat, but we're looking at even further limiting the possibility of gain. At that 244, if you gave a modest 3% gain on the value of the property, that house could be worth $600,000 in 30 years. Right? It's a significant increase even at modest market gains in the area. So the idea is that we want to be able to position ourselves to actually buy back the property and to control those properties, hopefully in perpetuity. That's the new version of the Habitat model in this area. This is an example from a land trust, and when I say land trust, it's a little bit more unique of an idea for this area, but you might be familiar with Golden Spike in Rathdrum. The idea is that you don't own the dirt, You do own the physical building, you have pretty much all rights of use, but the underlying structure belongs to some other, entity. In this case, it would be retained by Habitat. But the idea is that you can develop something that is for sale, you can build equity, you can still own it, it still belongs to you, you have an investment in having built it in the first place, but it can be something that fits into the neighborhood characteristics, that is reasonable and looks nice and is something that it will be a benefit to the community. This is in Blaine County, which is Sun Valley area, if you know the area. This has been developed by Land Trust there, and they would own the property underneath and have a first right of refusal or place a new person in when someone leaves. And so basically, that all summed together is just that we are kind of forced, if we're going to fulfill our mission, which we do have a specific mission of affordable housing, to move into some sort of multifamily development to maximize use of space. We want to do that intelligently. I mean, we understand that that can be a change to the surrounding community. It's not our intention to just build whatever unit without having any kind of concern for the neighbors, but we do believe that this is reasonable in terms of the area and what we believe in accomplishing. It's not necessarily entirely about as many units and making profit, because we're not making profit on the units, and we do want to make it something reasonable for the community and something that's cherished as an asset moving forward. So, any questions?
Have any questions?
No.
No? Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you. Getting back to our sign-up sheet, Robert Shore, you're in favor and you did wish to make a statement? I do. Sure, come on up. Just state your name and I'll swear you in.
Yep, Robert Shaw.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Help
Yes,
you out?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Robert.
I'm a property owner there too, but I wasn't notified at all. In fact, I own the mobile home parks that are to the north.
Okay.
And now they might have sent a notice to all the people in the park, but not me. I own the place and I never got nothing. I seen a sign.
I'll let Sean address that.
Yeah.
I believe the gentleman came in, was it yesterday, and spoke to Jake, and they did send it to where the tax bill goes.
No, they couldn't have, because my tax bill comes to my house in Hayden, Idaho, a P.O. box, so I don't know what they're doing. That's okay, I don't care about that. I seen the sign, so your signs work, okay? I have the mobile home park to the north.
Okay.
There's 12 units in there, and then I have the next one on over, and there's another 12 units there, and then there's another 12 and 12. So, senior park, everybody's senior people in there, they're on the same scale that he's talking about as far as low income or being able to afford, housing. My park's been there for about 48 years. The people got a hold of me because they did get notices, being there. And they have concerns. Their main concerns is basically privacy, of course. If I don't know if you can get that picture back up here that showed the driveway in and the park to the north.
From that would be the other presentation, that the picture from.
Yeah, he had one,
Sean's
I guess.
presentation.
But I guess you could see it on your thing too. Yeah, or the next one even shows it better. Yeah, where the fence is on the back there. The city put that up when they put NITR in there to protect the people from that stop sign all the way back quite a ways because of noise and lights coming at night, in the backyard. All mobile homes on that side there, their bedrooms are on that back side. I'm just trying to get it on the record that I would prefer, if this goes forward as a project, that it's understood that either that fence there comes on up or a sight obscuring and a sound deadening type thing would come right on up into this one up on the end here, because otherwise those people, they're proposing to use this back street here as the road. That's going to be the road in and out all day long and all night, whenever people come and go. And the people are just concerned for the noise, and the activity of different people. I mean, my park to the north now, they put in a similar situation in our 17 thing and built fourplexes in there. And somehow that got by without any fence whatsoever either on my side, the mobile home park side, and my homes are back there. The lights come in, the cars. We've already had issues with trespassing on the property, people and kids and everything else. So the concern there with me is just to make sure that and maybe I'll be addressing this if it comes up for planning and zoning, you know, for when these people do their things. I really don't know, but that's all I'm looking at. I mean, I don't disapprove of the project. I just said to, you know, have consideration with that other 20-some people or so that are living there too, you know, and have been there for, some of them been there 30 years. So that's what I'm just trying to tell you.
Okay. Well, to address some of your issues, the applicant will come back up and perhaps address some of your concerns. And Sean, let me ask you, in an R-17, what are the outlying or the setbacks on an R-17, or are there some, or?
There are, that's what I was going over in my report. It's 20 from the front, it's 20 from the rear, it's 20 from a street side, and 10 from an interior side.
So assuming where that CMU wall is and the white fence and the open space, and the applicant maybe can address whether that little gap's going to be infilled, that could be the back, and that would be 20 feet off the back if that was designated the back.
Correct.
So maybe that'll give you a little clarity on it.
Yeah, maybe. Okay.
So we'll let the applicant maybe address some of those concerns. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it.
Before we go there, Jake did talk to, and I'm sorry I missed your name, but Robert, and this concern did come up, so I did take the time to look at the code and what the buffer yard requirements are. And since it's a residential use against a residential use, there is no buffer yard requirement. If it was a commercial use against a residential use, or what's considered an incompatible use, then yes, there would be a requirement for a fence or for plantings, etc.
It's nothing.
Right. It's because it's residential, against
Residential.
a residential use.
Okay, thanks, Sean. The only other person, I have Greg Gervaisi. He's in favor, and he did not wish to speak. I know he's not here. So come on up if you can address some of the issues that you heard about.
Yeah. First of all, I say that I appreciate the concern for everybody in the neighborhood. We are also concerned about the same thing. You know, in terms of making sure that both privacy and safety for all the residents are concerned, it's important. There's a relatively high amount of traffic there. It is not particularly the most ideal location, whether it's Nida or Howard or Fruitland, or the fact that you're barely far enough away from 95 to even be able to consider yourself not a part of that commercial zone. So I think there's an issue with all of it. I think that in terms of what we feel, you know, having some sort of fence there is certainly appropriate. In terms of having something that is as heavy duty, you know, it's not our intention to build out that same, you know, wall all the way down the property line, both for the expense and otherwise. So, but we do appreciate that a barrier there would be useful for safety and privacy for everybody involved on both sides. I mean, you know, to a certain extent, although there is additional movement and traffic, you know, everybody generally sleeps at night and generally works during the day. I don't expect the general change, you know, between what they, you know, experience on a daily basis to be much different, you know, based on this model. Generally, we could have a similar amount of traffic regardless. We're talking maybe 1 or 2 extra units, but either way, you know, if we develop this, it's going to be more units and a little bit more traffic. You know, I think the overall impact between one plan and the other is relatively small. But the idea is to, again, you know, maximize what we can try and do at the lower end of the spectrum. I think it's one of those things that, you know, as time moves by, the city will have to address whether there are more appropriate areas, but you don't have a lot of areas to choose from in terms of new places to add density. And although there are other ways to deal with the demand is so high right now, and the supply has such a hard time keeping up with it. Density is about the only opportunity you have on the affordability side of the equation. So
yes. You are supportive of putting a continuing fence there or not?
Yes, but not of the same style. That large brick wall is somewhat extensive and costly. We would be supportive of a separating fence, but of some.
So of similar height?
I would argue maybe that's a little taller than necessary. I mean, I think a standard maybe 6-foot tall fence, something along those lines.
So how can we get, you know, satisfaction between the two of you? We have a little match here where, you know, if you put in some type of fence that meets, you know, the property owner's needs to the north and meets your needs as far as cost and so forth. So
I guess the point to make there, and I'm not in a place to make any absolute guarantees. We're generally interested in that. It would probably be one of those things where making that kind of requirement on any developer in between two residential zones, having those large brick walls exist between every separation of development.
I'm not
Right.
suggesting brick walls, I'm suggesting some compromise where the people can maintain their privacy at
Yeah.
some reasonable cost to you.
And I, this isn't necessarily meant to be, emotional in terms of like what we believe or they believe, but to a certain extent, we might want to protect our individuals' privacy from them.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I mean, there is this idea that our entrance would be new, but in the same vein, having access from these other people next door to be able to walk onto their property might be something they would want to restrict. So doing that is definitely in the interest of our development plan.
I know very little about Habitat for Humanity, other than the pictures I see where Jimmy Carter and his wife's beating nails. But I get a feeling that they are very community-oriented to try to help out the community and individuals that are in the lower income area.
Yes.
And I would think that, that and the property to the north there where they have the mobile homes, which is lower income, that hopefully there's a way you two can work something out that meets everybody's satisfaction. Now, I don't think, we're going to sit here and, make an addition of it, although I think we have in property a little bit to the north by the Golden Corral.
Yeah.
But it would be very, very nice if you two could come up with some
Sure.
mutually agreeable solution.
And I think the intention is hopefully, perhaps some days these people will just be neighbors who would want to be able to actually see each other over the fence and communicate with each other. That may be an idealistic statement, but the idea of a fence in general is fine, but in terms of that solid, very tall brick wall all the way down is just something we're not necessarily motivated
I just
for.
think
But
reasonable minds could,
Sure. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
I'd assume that it would be similar, wood fence or vinyl fence. There's height restrictions on fences that you can put in there. I saw in the picture there was a vinyl fence on another piece of property. So, Peter, to address some of that, I imagine it would be a similar fence that would be in most of our neighborhoods that we have here and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant? No, I appreciate it. Thank you. This time I'll close the public hearing on this item and give it to the commission to discuss and make a motion. Go ahead, John.
Some discussion, there's kind of a common theme that I see tonight, and, this is, again, I think some elements in our comp plan. What are the benefits of this zone change? And there's some elements in our comp plan that talk about workforce housing, affordable housing, that sort of thing. Right now, that piece of property has been a weed farm for 2 decades, and it grows weeds. That's all it's used for. Meanwhile, we have a need for affordable workforce housing, and trying to make meaningful use out of that property in its current zoning, as the illustration showed, with wonky sites, and it's very, very difficult because of its unique configuration. It needs to morph into something else, to make that meaningful and derive some community benefit out of it. So I think it's very well supported.
Okay.
I agree. And right adjacent to Kathy Reed and Lynn Peterson is, densified and it's communal, and I think this is a perfect foil for the two. They'll interact with each other, so it'll be a great corner. So.
Yeah, and I also agree. Like I said, I'm familiar with that piece of property. It's kind of an odd shape, and congratulations on purchasing that and the challenge to develop something on that. And I don't think anyone else would have kind of purchased it to do anything on it, really, to make it work. So I wish you the best of luck. So with that said, and perhaps even during our comp plan at some time, we can look at, tonight we had 2 things that came back with an R17 with a lot of questions of height, and maybe down the road we can look at, when we do our comp plan with certain areas, R17 with a max height of this or that. It's just one more thing I think we should look at in these infill areas, given that a lot of the infills do have neighborhoods in them. And then a lot of it is going to be duplexes and stuff and such. So, that being said, perhaps we'll look at it. I don't have a problem of reopening the public hearing at this point. If there's something substantial you might want to do, and I'll reopen the public testimony at this point, if all is agreeable.
We're fine.
I
Okay,
apologize
go ahead.
for the interruption. Just one quick one, and I meant to make this earlier. If there was a version of R12 that allowed multifamily at a lower height, it's not necessarily we want the height, it's that we want the ability to develop the multifamily style structure is really the issue. And so one of the problems you run into is the current zoning that allows that is only R17. So it may be something for future planning.
Okay, thank you. And at this point, I'll close public testimony and bring it to the commission for a motion.
Sure, I'd make a stab at a motion that, working through the findings worksheet for ZC 219 as a matter that's come before us tonight on the 12th of March of 2019, and there being a person present requesting approval of ZC 219, a request for a zone change from MH8 to R18 zoning district for the applicant James Casper, Executive Director for Habitat for Humanity North Idaho, Inc.
Commissioner, may I
Yes,
interrupt?
sir.
That's a typo. It should be R17, not R18.
Oh, I was just reading along. I shouldn't. Yeah, I'm getting tired. Thank you. R17 there. Property bounded by Howard Street and Fruitland Lane north of Niter Avenue, commonly known as 601 West Niter Avenue. Motion that we adopt the, as Commissioner Fleming calls them, the boilerplate page 1, B1 through B7 statements that are there. We adopt those. And the more substantive findings, B8, that we make the finding that the proposal is in conformance with the comp plan policy, as well supported by all of those objectives that Sean has listed on page 2 and 3 of the finding worksheet, with kind of an emphasis that this is strongly supporting the need for workforce development, affordable housing, suitable housing forms for all income levels. The benefits there are supported. B9, that we make the finding that the utilities are available, street improvements are already in, adequate capacity for water, wastewater, no conditions by staff in those regards. B10, that the characteristics of the site make it suitable, as it was stated in the staff report, vacant site, flat, no topographical or physical challenges or constraints. B11, that we make the finding that the proposal would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood for traffic. Neighborhood character is a good fit with adjacent land uses and such. And so the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, would find that the request of James Casper, Executive Director, Habitat for Humanity North Idaho, should be approved.
I have a first and second.
I'll second.
I have a second by Fleming. All in favor? No, I'm sorry. Roll call, Shannon.
It's getting late.
Yeah.
Fleming.
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
Lutrip.
Yes.
Okay, item ZC-2-19 is approved. Congratulations. If no further business, I call for a motion to adjourn.
So move for adjournment.
Here, here.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Appreciate it.